Hello everybody, welcome back to Diamond Painting with Eskies. I am sure that you are looking at the screen going, what in the name of goodness is that? Alright, let me get it where you can see more of it. Okay. I can't get it all on screen, you guys, and it's really not big. This is something really special to me, and excuse me. When we lost our home and lost nearly everything, this is one of the items that I personally hand carried out and put into a dear friend's vehicle because I was not about to lose it. This is a very, very nice, high-end, super high-end, custom-made stitching lap frame. Okay? Now, my dad, God rest his soul, had this made for me after my accident. Quite many years ago, somewhere between 16 and 18 years ago, he had this made for me. He did not mess with the internet, so it didn't work like that. But he found out when he took me to one of my stitching shops. I used to have a local needlework store that I went to. He had seen something like this in there, but he wanted one specially made for me because I'm so little that something like this would go over my legs if it was a normal size, and he wanted one that I could work on tiny little stitching projects with. So, the lady that he spoke to, that was the owner of the shop, told him who made these for her. He told her about what size he wanted it. She contacted the man, and my dad ordered this customized for me. I don't get to use it very often because I do huge stitched pieces, and I don't have a big base, and I don't know if the company is still in business, and I don't even know the name of it. About a year or two later, I think, he bought me a Grace lap quilting frame that I also use in my stitching and quilting. But this is kind of different because you're not sliding your stitching piece, your fabric, into these split wood rods. You sew them on to this. And this is the old way. When they started developing stitching frames, because so many women, had trouble doing it in hand, as they got older, this was developed. And this is the old way. So I'm going to show you how I attach my fabric, and then I will pause and finish attaching the whole thing. So what I do is I unscrew these wonderful little ends. Okay? And these are particularly nice, and this is how you can tell that it's a very high quality frame. This brass piece inside is the piece that goes over the screw end. So it doesn't split these pieces and ruin them. Okay? And that's kind of key to having it last. It's a big thing for having it last. Could I have bigger rods made for it? Oh yeah, absolutely. But that's rather expensive to do. I'm sorry, I'm detaching my frame at the moment. I'm taking it apart. I wanted you to see it intact so that you could see how something like this works. I know that you can still purchase these. I'm sure you can order them online. It's a stitching frame is what it's called. A lap frame. Lap stitching frame. Look up anything like that, and I'm sure that you will find something that will work for you. Like I said, this one was designed this small because this way it can sit on my legs. I'm not a wide person. I am actually a very physically small person. So, yeah. So then I detach the ends. And what makes this nice is that I could put this in another type of holding frame very easily to go over my legs or something to that effect. So that makes it very nice because these rods can be interchanged with other things. So then we pull this off. Okay. And as you see, it's these very long, specialized screws with 2 different types of threads. And these lovely, little, well-finished, well-thought-out blocks. So I try to keep everything kind of separated so that I can then find it. This is a bit dusty because I haven't gotten to use it in a while. But this is the rod that goes on the side, and these are, yes, they are the same size all the way around on this. So, it doesn't really matter. It is, you could do it without the spacers, but then you're going to have the exposed metal. You're going to catch your threads on everything else. So, I'm going to open up our lovely, that I'm so excited to work on, Joy Sunday stamped cross stitch. I need something wintry, you guys, and I want to learn the stamp thing with you. I'm sure it's only a tiny bit different, but I really think this is a good idea for beginning stitchers because you don't have to worry so much about following a pattern. So what I've done is I have pre-threaded a needle, and I just used one of my stitching needles because this is a large Aida cloth that is used to attach it to. Very heavy duty. It's actually got another name and I can't think of the name. And I've threaded it the way you would normally thread to sew, and it's got a little knot at the end. Alright? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach this by sewing it on to this. Sew these together, okay? Now, I want it to be far enough in that it doesn't tear this up. Normally, I would be able to do this with, what's the words I'm looking for? With the frame intact, without taking it apart. But because of the size of this, I really can't. Now, the good news with this piece is it is the same length as my rods in height. Isn't that awesome? That's going to help me a lot. So let me get this where you can see. I'm going in from the top for a good reason. Because I want to make sure that if I need to snip that, I can find it. You do not need a sharp needle for this. A blunt needle will work just fine. I'm coming in a little ways from that edge, and I'm going to try and get it on there as straight as I possibly can. But the blunt needle is going to work perfectly fine. I need to go in a bit further because, okay, there we are. There are holes in both your stitching fabric and holes in your frame fabric. So I'm doing very, very long in and out. And I could do this as a running stitch because I've done this for so many years, which is a quilting term. So you could actually do it like this, okay, and go back up. But this is going to be a little more accurate in keeping it in place today because the stitching fabric is very stiff. All right. So I'm going to pause you and finish attaching this completely, all 4 sides, so that you can then see it and we can start. I'm so excited for this. You have no idea how excited I am about this piece. So this will be a moment for you and quite a while for me. All right, everybody, sorry about that. My phone is, as I told you before, having a bunch of charging issues, and it decided it was going to die as I was paused putting this on the frame. So I did not sew it on top and bottom, strictly because this stitch piece is too big to do that with. So it is attached by having sewn it on to the black cloth that you saw at the beginning. And while I was waiting for my phone to charge a little bit, the mail came. And there was something incredibly special to me that arrived from a very sweet friend. very, very sweet friend. Very few people really know the story of how my babies were named. And my little girl that passed away this month, 4 years ago, was named for a Christmas movie character from my childhood. Frosty the Snowman. I just spelled it with an I-E. Because, well, she's a little girl. So this sweet friend sent me this beautiful needle minder, which, yes, can also serve as a cover minder. But I'm doing a lot of stitching again, and it's probably going to remain on my stitching quite a lot. And I cried happy tears when this arrived. My Frosty the Snowman reminds me a lot of my Frosty the Snow Puppy. Yeah. And we're doing snowman themed things. I collect snowmen. Sorry, I had to put the needle in my mouth for a moment. So I went ahead while I was stuck waiting, and I began this at a corner that would be difficult to maneuver and show you what I'm doing. So, because this is an 11 count, it is stitched with 3 threads. Okay? Which I knew, but I wanted to double check. And yes, 11 count, 3 threads. Which means that the back stitching is done in 2 threads. So, perfectly cool. So, where the stamped cross stitch is very different from a counted cross stitch, other than the fact that it's already pre-printed, is that the colors on the canvas do not represent the color of thread. So you will need to reference your thread colors down here in order to make sure that you're working with the right thing, as well as these numbers up here that correlate to the thread card. Also, you receive this paper pattern. Okay? Very nice because it shows what it's going to look like in true color. Alright? In the actual thread colors. Which is important in this one because this little pink back stitching right here is yellow on the piece, and I really can't see it. It's very light, and I'm very old. So, I was trying to figure out where does this gold thread go, and this wasn't telling me because it shows this gold line that I can't see. So I looked on here and found the correlating number. Crazy puppy barking. And on this pattern, it's bright pink. So by turning this to the pattern, I was able to see this is where my gold thread goes, along with right here. Perfect. That explains everything to me. So, on an 11 count, I usually would use a size 22 needle. But these are gold-dyed needles, and by checking them against my other needles, I found out that they are size 24, which is perfectly fine with a gold-dyed needle, because the eye is big enough for me to thread 3 strands into it. Awesome sauce, right? It works. So I cut one of these 6-stranded pieces and worked this much with half of the length that comes with it. I don't want to teach you guys to do what I do because, well, that takes years of experience to get that way. Even though there are already 3 here, you still need, and I do mean need, to pull the strands out individually, because otherwise they will lay on your fabric in a twisted fashion that is not going to look so good. I know, I've made the mistake. I'm giving you the voice of experience here. And then realign your threads. They're not going to retwist like that, which is good. So I'm lining them up carefully so they're pretty much even. And then I'm going to clip the ends because they're a little fuzzy, and that makes it harder to thread my needle. So you can see I'm clipping the teeniest little bit off the ends to make them even. Those little pieces of thread are called orts, which means odd random thread. I don't keep them. Some people collect them. It's a little weird to me. But, you know, I throw them away. In this case, they went on my sweater, which I'll then pull off later. So, if you have difficulty threading a needle in one direction, turn the needle around. Needles are designed to be threaded from one side. So it's slightly concave on one side. And watch this be a struggle. Because, yeah. It's just that kind of week, y'all. It's okay, though. That kind of week means I'm working constantly and trying to get stuff done for you. So I know I'm doing the counted cross stitch help videos, but I also wanted to start my very first stamped cross stitch with you guys, and we can kind of learn a little bit together. Apparently I did not get those even. And yes, I am licking my thread. It makes it easier for me to thread a needle. And then I flatten it between my fingers so that it's more likely to go in the eye of the needle. Because 3 threads at once is a little difficult. So as you can tell, it doesn't want to go in this way. I'm going to turn my needle around, realign my threads, and see if it goes in a little better that way. These particular little threads are being really difficult. And if that happens, you can thread them one at a time and line them up, which might be what I have to pause and do. Really hope not. Because I got one of them not wanting to go on there. Goodness gracious. This is like a comedy of errors. I'm telling you how to correct the situation, but I'm shaking so badly I can't correct it myself. I can tell you, these are not actual DMC threads. And I know this because they don't have the same sheen that real DMC has. And that's okay. If you had a stash of thread and wanted to replace them out, you could. I don't think it's necessary, personally. What is wrong with this today? Or wrong with me? I'm literally shaking. Like I told you guys, I have days where I just shake constantly. I really, truly do. And it sucks to try and paint or stitch or diamond paint. It just... my body's just not listening to me. See, I get 2 in there. But I got 1 thread that is just being a jerk. And I really want them to go in all at once. Yeah. Good Lord with this. Let me try something. I think they're just not wanting to stay together is the issue. See, even for very experienced stitchers, we have problems that can be very frustrating sometimes. This is that time. I'm kind of keeping the video going in spite of this, so that you all can see that you're not alone in the struggles you may have in stitching or with a particular kit. And yay, it finally went in. Okay. So I'm bringing my thread over part of the length, so that, as you can see again, I have 2 sets of strands at the top, a single set at the bottom. Okay, so again, there are no knots in stitching. So what I'm doing with this very sweet little frame... Oh, I was going to attach there. I'm not. I'm sorry, guys. I'm going to start... Where do I want to start this? Way down, up in the middle, close to the middle. So then what I'm going to do, because on this, the yellow is this particular green thread, and I'm going to turn it over in order to grab the ends of the thread at the other side. And as you can see, I bring them up close, but leave a tail. And for doing this, I'm going to push that tail aside. But that was the wrong way. Ooh, and I'm banging into you. I am so sorry, folks. Like I said, one of those days where things are not going perfectly, but it can still be a really good day. Seriously. Even if things aren't working exactly the way you would like, you can make a good and calm day of it as much as possible. In this case, that means getting my things to line up the way I would like and locking my thread in on the back, as I showed you on my other cross-stitching video. Sorry about that. I was asked a question, which is fine. It's okay. So what I've done is I have already put my needle down. I'm pulling it back up to make this a little easier to lock that thread. I wouldn't advise doing this unless you are very used to doing so. So do it the way that I showed you before, which is to go down. I'm turning it over to make sure that I am catching those threads inside of the back of that stitch. That way my thread locks in place, as you can see. And I'm going to do that for the first 3 stitches. Okay, so now I can sit a little more comfortably. There we go. Now, when I stitch on a frame, just so you know, excuse me with this cough, I do not do the stab method which is what you saw me doing in the hoop, where it's one hand pushing it down, you pull that hand around, pull the thread through, go back up, put your hand on the top again, and pull it forward. I use a method on frames that is called two-handed stitching. So I have, for me, it's my right hand underneath, because I can feel it out better that way, and I pull on the top with my left hand. So I've got a hand underneath working this stitching process, as well as a hand on top doing the same. Okay? And yes, there's an esky hair there. Okay, so I've completed that row. I'm moving up to the next row. You can do these as individual stitches if you would prefer. That's what I did down here, because it was much easier to prevent wasting a lot of thread. So, and I'm just going to go through this process throughout this. Now, what I do like is that you have numbers on certain parts of your fabric that correlate to these color numbers that are at the top. So you don't have to play a guessing game with it. Only areas that were too small to mark that way are not going to be marked, and then you need to pay a little bit of attention. So this is going to be a very quick video with you. I think it's going to be like 30 minutes, something like that in total, because I just wanted to show you how I'm doing this. The one thing I do want to show you before I go, and I have to complete these next 2 stitches, is how I move to this next space where it's skipping a row. This is going to be fully covered in the back, just like the little penguin. So I'm able to move up and skip that row. It will get covered up in the background. You see how I did that? Very easy. I would not personally advise going long distances because your thread on the back will show through on the front of your stitching, and you don't want it to, because there are little holes, you know. So if I were to go from here over to here, it's going to show when I frame this piece. So you don't want to do that. I do not do pin stitch. It doesn't like me. I don't like it. It's a good agreement. So I just use, you know, the methods that I've shown you already on how to begin and end my thread. In a live stream, I showed you how to start with the loop method, which I cannot do on the main stitching here because I'm working 3 threads, not an even number. And in the back stitching, I will be able to show you, and it won't be long till we get to some back stitching. But for now, this is not a day, obviously, that I can work on my painting as much as I wanted to get it finished today, my rose painting. So I am going to spend a bunch of my day working on this, so we can progress a little faster and I can show you some back stitching easily. My thoughts and prayers are with all of you as always. I am going to let you go while I go stitch, and you guys hopefully have a wonderful week and weekend. And do what makes you relax, whether that be diamond painting, stitching, or paint by numbers, knitting, crochet, whatever that is. This is a tough enough time of year, and for so many of us, and stitching or diamond painting or whatever can really help to keep your mind somewhere that's more positive. So just have a great time with your stuff, and I will see you in the next one. Okay? See you next time. Bye-bye.